Do you love the wonderful recap of Oz? I sure hope so. Do you love it so much that you want official Oz recap apparel? Then I have great news for you. I've just opened a Zazzle store where you can buy merchandise inspired by the Oz books. If you're looking for a t-shirt of Glinda the Good reading the Royal Historian's books, or perhaps a pillow depicting our sleepy friends in the poppy field, then look no further. You can find these items and more available at zazzle.com/store/OzRecap. Hello everyone, and welcome to the wonderful recap of Oz. My name is Justin Peavy, and I will be reading through L. Frank Baum's novels and diving into a few of the countless film, television, stage, and literary adaptations taking place in the magical land of Oz. A lot of the information I present at the beginning of these episodes comes from Robert Baum, great-grandson of L. Frank Baum. When Charles Winthrop and Sons released their first edition facsimiles of Baum's Oz books, each book contained a letter or two. Some of them are from Paul R. Bienvenu, a Baum scholar, and others are from Robert Baum. Bienvenu's letters give more historical context, while Mr. Baum's letters provide more personal anecdotes from his family history. In the letter found in the 13th Oz book, The Magic of Oz, he talks about his great-grandparents, L. Frank and Maud Baum, and how devoted they were to their family and each other. As I've mentioned in previous episodes, Baum's health was declining at this time in his life, and his great-grandson talks about how supportive they were of each other, even in such distressing times. Baum wrote additional manuscripts to be published, just in case something happened to him. These books were meant to support his wife in the event of his death. In February of 1918, Baum told his publishers that he had completed 2 more Oz books, so that they can be published over the next couple of years in the event that he can't write any more. Despite his optimistic outlook that his gallbladder operation would be a success, he suffered from a series of different complications. By the end of the summer, Maud was serving as his personal stenographer. The manuscript for The Magic of Oz was praised by the publishers, and Baum announced to them that he was working on another Oz book that would be even better. The letter doesn't clarify if he is mentioning what becomes the 14th published Oz book, or material for an additional Oz book. Regardless, this is one of the last interactions he had with the publisher. The 13th Oz book was published in June of 1919, a month after Baum died. In 1919, sales of the Oz books doubled. Some historians have argued that this uptick was influenced by Baum's death. But even in his death, Baum had more in store for his readers. Many people consider his last Oz book, number 14, to be amongst his greatest, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Here is The Magic of Oz, a faithful record of the remarkable adventures of Dorothy and Trot and the Wizard of Oz, together with the Cowardly Lion, the Hungry Tiger, and Cap'n Bill in their successful search for a magical and beautiful birthday present for Princess Ozma of Oz. Mount Munch lies in the eastern part of Munchkin country, just on the border of the Deadly Desert. It's too steep to climb, so the Munchkins have never traveled to its peak. Nobody even knows that people do live there at the flat top of the mountain, and that they're called the High-Ups. A wise old High-Up by the name of Binny-Aru lives there. He used to practice magic before Ozma outlawed it entirely in the land of Oz. Despite destroying most of his magical tools, there is one thing that cannot escape his mind. A method of transformation that no other sorcerer knows about, not even Glinda. It's as simple as stating a magic word. Of course, it is extremely hard to pronounce, and the author discourages us from even attempting to do so, but I can tell you that the word is spelt Pyrzqxgl. I will refer to this simply as the magic word throughout. Binny-Aru documented the proper pronunciation of the magic word and hid it in a secret place in his home so it could never be found. He's able to conceal it from his wife, Mopsy-Aru, but doesn't have the same luck with his rude and disagreeable son, Kiki-Aru, who has always aspired to be wicked. Kiki stubs his toe on a loose floorboard while searching for some magic tools in his father's room. He examines the floorboard and lifts it up, uncovering the pronunciation of the magic word written underneath it. He immediately copies down the pronunciation on a piece of paper, then replaces the floorboard and goes to the garden. He carefully studies the paper before placing it in a tin box and burying it in the garden. When nighttime comes, he decides to try his first transformation. He successfully turns into a large bird and flies over the desert and out of Oz, so that he can't be caught by Ozma, Glinda, or the wizard. He crosses the desert and safely lands in the country of Highland. He then flies over Merryland and lands in No Land. He spends the night there and, in the morning, transforms himself back into a human so that he can ask a local for some food. Later in the day, he transforms back into a bird and flies into the kingdom of Ix, and then to the land of Ev, where he resumes his natural form. He comes upon an inn and asks for food and lodging, but the manager tells him he'll need money to do so. This is a concept unfamiliar to the people of Oz, so Kiki, without a penny to his name, is turned away. He passes by a window of the inn and sees a man counting gold pieces. While the man's back is turned, Kiki-Aru becomes a bird again, flies in, steals a piece of gold, and flies back out undetected. This action is noticed by an old man who praises the boy's wicked deeds. The man introduces himself as Ruggedo, the former Nome King. He becomes formally acquainted with Kiki-Aru and is fascinated by his strange ability to perform transformations, a power Ruggedo used to be well versed in. The two of them get a room at the inn together. Kiki gives the manager the stolen gold, while Ruggedo brings out some valuable jewels which he'd taken from the Gnome Kingdom after his exile. Over supper, the two of them talk about the land of Oz. Ruggedo explains how badly he wants to exact revenge on the people of Oz, specifically Dorothy and Ozma. He offers Kiki-Aru a pocket full of jewels in exchange for the secret of transformations, which he plans to use to conquer the Emerald City. Ruggedo even offers to make Kiki the ruler of Oz if he receives his help. Kiki agrees to help him conquer Oz, but refuses to reveal the secret. Kiki thinks it over that night and announces that he wants to travel to the Rose Kingdom the next morning. Ruggedo, however, is able to persuade the boy to travel to Oz and begin their conquest. Kiki agrees to transform Ruggedo and himself into beasts, as Glinda's Book of Records only tracks the doings of people and not animals. Kiki-Aru is impressed by the plan, but still doesn't feel confident that he can trust Ruggedo. However, he knows that Ruggedo won't harm him as long as the magic word remains secretive, and plans to transform the gnome into a marble statue after the conquest of Oz. Meanwhile, Ruggedo plans to discover the secret word and then transform Kiki into a bundle of sticks that he'll burn. They continue with their plan while they both secretly decide to trick each other. Kiki excuses himself for a few minutes and tells the gnome to stay behind. Suddenly, Ruggedo is transformed into the shape of an eagle. Another eagle appears with Kiki's voice, and they begin to fly over the desert into the land of Oz. In the Emerald City, however, no danger is expected. Dorothy travels to the room of Trot and Cap'n Bill, and begins discussing what they can get Princess Ozma for her birthday. Cap'n Bill announces that he and Trot can pick the magic flower which the glass cat told him about. Every minute or so, it blooms into a new flower, and anything that is picked from it lives forever. They ask the glass cat where such a flower exists. The cat, who has now gone back to her ways of bragging about her pink brains and how you can see them work, will only tell them where the flower can be found if they compliment her. She reveals that it's in the middle of a small island, planted in a gold pot in the northern part of Munchkin country. She agrees to bring Trot and Cap'n Bill to the flower, causing Dorothy to seek something else for Ozma's birthday. Dorothy interviews her friends about their gifts. Scraps is writing a song for Ozma, the Tin Woodman is making a girdle bedazzled with tin and emeralds, and the Scarecrow is having straw slippers made. She asks Toto for advice, but nothing he suggests satisfies the girl's mind. She travels to Quadling Country to consult with Glinda the Good, who shows Dorothy her own birthday gift in progress. She's making a dress with threads spun from emeralds. Dorothy is still stumped as to what she can do, and Glinda recommends that she make a cake that carries some sort of surprise. When Dorothy returns to the Emerald City, she consults with the Wizard of Oz. The wizard also is unsure of what to do for Ozma's birthday. Dorothy explains her idea to make a hollow cake, where she will hide several 3-inch tall monkeys that will dance for Ozma and serve the cake to her guests. The wizard agrees to help her by going into the forests in Gillikin Country to enlist the help of some monkeys, but she will then shrink and hide in the cake that Dorothy makes, making this cake a gift from both of them. They enlist the help of the Cowardly Lion and the Hungry Tiger and make preparations to travel to Gillikin Country. The home of most of the wild beasts of Oz is the Gugu Forest, which is ruled by a large yellow leopard called Gugu, after the name of the forest. His advisors are Bru the bear, Lou the unicorn, and Rango the Grey Ape. One morning, they're all meeting to discuss a fight that broke out in the forest earlier. At this time, 2 eagles, the transformed versions of Kiki-Aru and Ruggedo the gnome, fly over the forest. Kiki excuses himself and uses the magic word to disguise Ruggedo and himself as beasts with heads of lions, bodies of monkeys, wings of eagles, and tails of donkeys with golden knobs on the end. They fly down to the Forest Council, introducing themselves as Lyman Eags from Sky Island. They falsely announce that the people of Oz intend to make war upon the beasts with the hopes to enslave them. Gugu the King doesn't buy this, and Bru the Bear wonders how the Lymaneegs know this to be true. Ruggedo does all the talking, saying he overheard a conversation in a village of Oz. He proposes that they team up and conquer the Ozites before they can conquer the beasts. Ruggedo incentivizes this by saying, after this conquest, they will turn all the beasts into people, and the people into beasts, forcing them to live in the forests while the former beasts enjoy the luxuries of the Oz people. King Gugu asks for proof that such a transformation could be completed. Kiki excuses himself yet again when, suddenly, Lou the unicorn is transformed into a jolly Gillikin man. This wins the king's trust, but the council agrees to discuss the proposal further in private and reconvene with the Lymaneegs the next morning. Meanwhile, the Glass Cat leads Trot and Cap'n Bill on a 2-day journey to find the magic flower. They make their way to the edge of a lake with a small island only 50 feet in the distance. The island is empty and barren, except for a golden flower pot carrying the magic flower. Cap'n Bill takes a pocket knife out of his coat and whittles a handle for an axe head he just so happens to be carrying in his pocket as well. He begins cutting logs and building a raft so he and Trot can travel over the water. While he's at work, the Glass Cat cries out that a Kalita is approaching. Cap'n Bill grabs a wooden stake he made, strikes the beast with it, and then impales the beast, pinning it to the ground. The Kalita tries to escape, but can't free himself from the stake. The beast threatens Cap'n Bill that his friends will tear him to pieces for treating him that way. Bill isn't concerned, since he'll be using his raft to row to the island of the magic flower to escape. The Kalita laughs maniacally after learning this, but Bill continues building the raft. The job is finished just near the end of the day, so Bill, Trot, and the Glass Cat board the raft and travel to the island, while the Kalita frees himself and looks to get the holes in his body mended. The sailors disembark and walk towards the flower pot to get a closer look at the magic flower. They stand still for a moment, admiring it together. But when Cap'n Bill tries to take a step forward, he can't lift his foot off the beach. His peg leg, however, is free. Trot tries to walk too, but her feet are both stuck. The Glass Cat, who can walk freely, notices that Trot and Cap'n Bill's feet have grown roots, planting them into the ground. Since only flesh seems to stick to the island, the Glass Cat is able to run back to the Emerald City to ask the wizard or Glinda for some help. The cat walks along the bottom of the lake, reaching the shore, and starts her journey back home. The next morning, there's a large gathering in the forest of Gugu. It's led by the king and his council, with the Lymaneegs in attendance, as well as more animals than can be counted. Ruggedo is given the opportunity to publicly address the inhabitants of this forest, continuing to lie about the people of Oz. The animals get into a heated debate before they're interrupted by the entrance of royalty. In strolls the Cowardly Lion and the Hungry Tiger, carrying Princess Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz. The guests from the Emerald City address the King of Gugu and his council with the intentions of acquiring some monkeys for Ozma's surprise. However, Ruggedo grows concerned at the sight of his familiar enemies. Kiki-Aru immediately realizes that the visiting Ozites could threaten his plan, so he discreetly travels closer to the wizard. He uses the magic word to transform the wizard into a fox. Once this occurs, Kiki seizes the wizard's black bag of magic tools and flees. More transformations begin to occur. Dorothy is transformed into a lamb, and the Cowardly Lion becomes a Munchkin boy. Ruggedo tries to stop Kiki, but the boy turns the gnome into a goose. The Hungry Tiger becomes a rabbit, and Gugu the King becomes a Gillikin woman. The rest of the beasts run out of the clearing to escape the strange magic, leaving the 6 transformed creatures behind. The lamb, the fox, the Munchkin, the rabbit, and the Gillikin reveal their true identities, but then they turn to the goose. The goose states that he is simply just a goose. With the wizard's bag missing, the Emerald City residents find themselves trapped in their new forms, unknowingly in the presence of their enemy.
Hi, I'm Karen.
And I'm Colleen.
And this is Books,
Movies,
and Musicals.
Oh my! Come join us as we discuss our favorite childhood stories in analytical and honest ways.
Most recently, we've been discussing Harry Potter and Disney princesses.
We have so many more ideas and we can't wait to go through them with you.
So, keep it magical.
And leave a little magic wherever you go. Bye!
Kiki-Aru looks down from the trees and, having just hidden the wizard's bag, watches his victims deliberate. They all look around for the bag, but are unsuccessful. Ruggedo, currently disguised as a goose, takes this opportunity to sneak away from the search party and find Kiki. Once the wizard notices the goose's absence, Gugu the Gillikin woman correctly theorizes that the goose is truly the Limanig. They all continue looking for the wizard's bag and plan to travel to see Glinda the Good to have their enchantments broken. Meanwhile, the Glass Cat arrives in the Emerald City, looking for the wizard to help her rescue Trot and Cap'n Bill. Toto is the one who informs her of Dorothy and the wizard's whereabouts. She travels to the forest of Gugu, encountering a wolf who tells her all about the mysterious magicians who are wreaking havoc on the beasts. Not long after this, the cat finds her transformed friends. After learning more about the current predicament, she theorizes that the so-called magician must still have the black bag, and it may only be recovered through his capture. So, they start looking for the missing goose. Ruggedo the goose searches for Kiki and grows frightened that he could possibly lay an egg at any moment. Once Kiki-Aru makes himself known, Ruggedo demands that he be given the shape of a Limanig again. Kiki climbs high up in a tree and completes the transformation. When he returns, they both travel to the edge of a clearing to discuss a new course of action. While looking at some monkeys in the distance, they decide to conquer Oz by transforming the monkeys into an army of giant soldiers. To Ruggedo's frustration, Kiki again excuses himself to begin the metamorphoses. What the 2 co-conspirators failed to notice was the presence of a fox, the altered wizard. The fox had snuck into a hollow tree and overheard the Limanig's entire conversation. Kiki climbs the tree where the wizard is hiding, and he uses the magic word. A monkey grows into a 50-foot-tall soldier, to Kiki's delight. He does this again with another monkey, not realizing that the wizard has now heard this magic word twice. After 4 more monkeys are transformed, the wizard takes matters into his own hands. Using the magic word, he transforms Kiki into a hickory nut. Ruggedo spots the wizard, who tries to convert the gnome into a walnut. However, he doesn't pronounce the magic word correctly the second time. Ruggedo attempts to use the same pronunciation to transform the wizard into a goose, but fails. The wizard remembers the pronunciation just in time, and successfully turns Ruggedo into a walnut. With the 2 villains in the forms of nuts, they are unable to speak and therefore can't transform themselves. The wizard then uses the magic word to restore the true forms of himself and everyone else who was affected. With Ruggedo and Kiki-Aru trapped in the wizard's pocket, they turn their attention to the giant soldiers. In the midst of all this excitement, Trot and Cap'n Bill are still rooted to the ground on the island of the magic flower. They watch the flower bloom, fade, and bloom again over and over. Just as Trot wishes for the flower to grow some fruit, it does exactly that. An assortment of different fruits grow, and the two prisoners help themselves to plums, cherries, oranges, peaches, apples, and other things. After they eat, they discuss how often they take the things they have for granted. For example, the ability to move or to be in good health. This is when they notice a colorful duck swimming towards the magic isle. The bird introduces itself as the Lonesome Duck, being the only duck in the land of Oz who has no friends or family and lives in a diamond palace where he can summon food by magic. The duck also informs Trot and Cap'n Bill that the island will cause them to grow smaller and smaller until there is nothing left of them. Trot and Cap'n Bill ask the duck to use its magic to rescue them, but the duck isn't strong enough to do this. Therefore, it resolves to conjure large toadstools that will allow Trot and Cap'n Bill to sit. As soon as this is done, the duck swims away. Back in the forest of Gugu, Rango the Grey Ape is mortified at the sight of his monkeys as giants. Rango finds the wizard and his friends in the clearing and requests their help. The wizard ponders how he can rescue the monkeys, while the glass cat climbs a tree to get a better look at the giants. On her way down, she finds the wizard's black bag hanging on a tree limb. She brings the bag down and hides it again, so that she can receive more attention when she finds it, and so she can persuade the wizard to take a detour to rescue Trot and Cap'n Bill. Once she brings the wizard to the bag, he makes a bargain with Rango. He agrees to help the ape if he can borrow a dozen monkeys for Ozma's birthday surprise. This is something that Rango reluctantly agrees to. They immediately travel to the site of the giants, where the wizard restores them to their true forms. This wins the favor of King Gugu and all of the beasts in the jungle, so several monkeys happily agree to go to the Emerald City with the wizard. He uses his magic tools to make a dozen of them small, places them in a cage, and bids goodbye to the inhabitants of the forest. The glass cat guides the wizard, Dorothy, the cowardly lion, and the hungry tiger to the Isle of the Magic Flower. When they encounter a thick settlement of underbrush and vines, the wizard enchants a small axe to cut a path for them to travel along. When they reach the river, they almost step on a diamond palace, inhabited by the Lonesome Duck. They speak briefly, the duck explaining that it knows no magic that could rescue their friends from the Magic Isle. The duck shows off the palace it built for itself before it goes inside and shuts the door. Eventually, they spot the island in the middle of the lake. The glass cat walks along the floor of the lake, traveling to the island to let Trot and Cap'n Bill know that the wizard is working to free them. The wizard sets up some magic tools and tries several different methods to rescue his friends. Unfortunately, none of these tools have any success. With Trot and Cap'n Bill now reduced to half their natural sizes, the matter becomes far more urgent. The lion swims in the lake and retrieves Bill's raft. He carries it to Dorothy and the wizard, who use it to cross the lake until it reaches the shore of the island. The wizard attempts to use an axe or pincers to uproot Trot and Cap'n Bill, but this is met by protests on the grounds that their roots are made of flesh and these methods could harm them. Trot comes to terms with her ultimate demise and hopes Dorothy will tell Ozma the truth of her and Bill's disappearance. This distresses Dorothy to the point of tears, so she comes up with a new plan. She tells the wizard to transform Trot and Cap'n Bill into bumblebees using the magic word. That way, the roots should disappear and the two of them can be restored once they reach the shore. The wizard tries this, and after calling out the magic word, Trot and Cap'n Bill become two bees. They fly over the lake as Dorothy and the wizard use the raft to return to land, where Trot and Cap'n Bill become human again. Bill, however, is not satisfied without retrieving the magic flower. Realizing that his flesh foot and leather shoe will become rooted in the island, he ties a piece of tree bark to his shoe. He uses the raft to go back to the island, where he successfully retrieves the magic flower and paddles back immediately. The wizard and Cap'n Bill cut a flat wooden board to fasten to the lion's back so he can carry the golden flower pot. Now that Dorothy, the wizard, Trot, and Cap'n Bill have retrieved their gifts for Ozma, they begin to travel home to the Emerald City. Along the way home, the glass cat keeps trying to grab the tails of the small monkeys through their cage. She keeps doing this despite the protests from Dorothy, Trot, and the monkeys themselves. They eventually arrive in Munchkin country but are forced to camp for the night. The wizard magically conjures 3 large tents for the entire party and serves food from a magic kettle. Later that night, while almost everyone is asleep, the cat continues to antagonize the monkeys through their cage. The hungry tiger grows frustrated and tries to strike the cat with his paw. He misses but hits the cage, bending 2 of the bars. This allows the monkeys to escape. They leap out of the cage and onto the glass cat, forcing her to a stream surrounded by mud. They cover the cat in mud, including her eyes and ears, and then run back to their cage. In the morning, the dirty cat is discovered by Dorothy, Trot, the Wizard, and Cap'n Bill. The Wizard refuses to allow Bill to clean the cat, seeing this as proper punishment for messing with the monkeys. While they continue their journey home, the cat finds a lake, bathes herself in it, and takes her own path home. At the time in which Dorothy and her friends return to the Emerald City, Ozma is entertaining Professor H.M. Wogglebug T.E. in her palace. He's trying to come up with a proper punishment for his students at the athletic college, after they threw their professor into the water knowing a Wogglebug can't swim. The Wogglebug laid at the bottom of the river for 3 days until he was rescued. While the Wogglebug is speaking with Ozma, the Wizard and Cap'n Bill are able to discreetly bring their gifts into the palace. The Wizard immediately begins training the 12 small monkeys for their birthday routine. When Ozma's birthday arrives, she gives her closest friends a grand feast at the palace in the Emerald City. Here in the banquet hall, she is met by many familiar faces from previous books who bring her gifts and sit at the table for dinner. Just before dessert is served, a cake is brought to Ozma. She cuts the cake and outjumps the 12 monkeys, who wish Ozma a happy birthday, dance, play music on small instruments, and perform acrobatic tricks. Dorothy is happy with the cake's success, and Ozma is just as delighted with it. Gifts are then presented to Ozma, specifically the emerald gown and the magic flower. Ozma places the magic flower in her bedroom and thanks all of her distinguished guests. The next morning, Ozma asks Dorothy and the Wizard to tell her more about their journey in the forest of Gugu. The Wizard suddenly remembers that the 2 so-called magicians, having been transformed into nuts, are still in his pocket. Ozma advises the Wizard to restore them to their natural forms, which makes the Wizard uneasy. Dorothy recommends restoring them by the Fountain of Oblivion so that they can drink the water and forget the secret of transformations. Dorothy gets a cup while the Wizard and Ozma summon the Cowardly Lion and the Hungry Tiger for backup. Once Dorothy has returned, the Wizard transforms the hickory nut back into its natural, yet thirsty self. Kiki-Aru appears and promptly drinks from the fountain. He doesn't recall anything, so Ozma agrees to keep the high-up in the Emerald City to teach him their kind and true ways. Then the Wizard transforms the walnut, and is shocked to find that it is Ruggedo, the former Nome King. Ruggedo immediately announces his plan for revenge, but can't overcome his thirst any longer. He drinks from the fountain and forgets everything about himself and his wicked deeds, for the second time. Since Ruggedo relearned his evil ways by returning to the Nome Kingdom, Ozma agrees to keep Ruggedo in the Emerald City, where he will live by a more peaceful and good-natured example. Having forgotten all about his plans for conquest and his many failed attempts at it, Ruggedo finally finds peace and contentment in the Emerald City. I'm surprised by how short the summary was, but in retrospect, it is among the shorter installments. Also, the major conflicts are resolved about 2/3 of the way in. Everything else just seems to be padding. Although I liked the team of Kiki-Aru and Ruggedo as villains, I thought they left the story way too quickly. Maybe it would have had a bigger impact if Trot and Bill were saved before Kiki and Ruggedo were captured. Other than that, my biggest criticism of this book is how we have even more recycled plotlines. I'm getting a little tired of the transformations, especially since they were a big part of the previous book. Here we also have the return of the Fountain of Oblivion, and subsequently the former Nome King is affected by it a second time. And if he becomes evil again in the next book, I swear to God, I don't know how many times he's going to keep repenting and reverting. If I were Ozma, I would have stopped forgiving him a long time ago. We also have the subplot of Ozma's birthday approaching, and a large birthday party was what brought Book 5 to its end as well. And while it's a plotline we've already seen before, it means that the last 8 books have taken place at least over the course of a year. I'm interested to see if there's a way to get an accurate timeline of the events in these books. And, Mr. Baum, we already know how beautiful and beloved Ozma is. You don't need to devote so many pages to describing her and her relationships in previous adventures in every book you write. I just skim these parts because it starts to feel a little copy and paste. This book does feel very much in the family, however. There aren't many new characters at all, and we focus on some fan favorites from the previous books. There were also some grisly depictions in here that I enjoyed, but could be a little scary for kids. For example, I thought the Isle of the Magic Flower was really disturbing. The imagery of roots in your feet was pretty scary, and John R. Neal's watercolor certainly did not make things better. And not to mention that Kalita being impaled on the beach, lifting himself off of the stake, and then returning to the forest with the hole clean through him. This book is probably not going to be in my top 5, but it was still an interesting and pretty quick read. I've only got one quote this time, and despite the fact it's sort of self-deprecating, I could see past the innocence of the character who says it. It was one of the only sentences in this book that seemed really profound to me. I've never been especially proud of myself, but I'd rather be the way I was born than anything else in the whole world. Said by Dorothy. Thank you again for listening in. If you have any interest in supporting the podcast, you can visit anchor.fm/OzRecap. I hope to create some video companions to some of these episodes in the future, and becoming a supporter would help me better create content for my fellow Oz fans. If you are interested in reading the Oz series along with me, all of Baum's novels are in the public domain and available online for free. They're easy to read, and the illustrations alone are so interesting to behold. You are now all members of my Oz book club. Sorry, I don't make the rules. Well, that's all I've got. Be sure to follow me on Twitter at OzRecap for updates and more Oz content. Until next time, I'm Justin, and this has been the wonderful recap of Oz.